This weekend, El Camino, the Breaking Bad movie, comes out, so it seemed like the absolute perfect time to stop and rank all 5 Breaking Bad seasons from the least best to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. If you're a normal subscriber, you've probably noticed I'm in a different location. That's because I'm in San Diego right now for a conference. Actually, earlier today, I heard 10 hours straight of lectures. It was awesome, mind-blowing stuff. Got to take a selfie with Lewis Howes, a guy that I've been following for a little while now. His podcast, books, and courses have actually been really helpful for me in kind of my own little adventure in pursuing YouTube full-time. But because of all that, things are going to be a little bit different for me as I'm trying to film this, as well as the way I'm going to edit it. It's got a little bit more personality than normal. It's probably not going to be as tightly cut as some of my future stuff. Before I start diving into each individual season, Breaking Bad is one of the best TV shows of all time, and that's because it's so intricately woven from beginning to end. The mistakes that they make in season 1 matter all the way up until the final episodes of the show. As you rewatch through the show a second time through, you notice the exact conversations where Walter's ego leads to his downfall in some way because he can't let certain things go. You notice all of these moments that set up the future seasons, and that is great television to me. You can see the characters developed. You see the exact moments where they transform, where Walter White disappears and Heisenberg takes over. And that's what makes this some of the best television for me. So as I start talking about least best, that's the language I had to use. I couldn't say that there are the worst seasons because the worst seasons of Breaking Bad are still fantastic television with amazing acting, great story arcs, and even in them, they did set up what made the future seasons amazing on every level. Just had to give those disclaimers. This is some of the best television has ever offered, and many of you would say, and to some extent I would say, it is the best that we have ever gotten in this format. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place for me is season 2. Now, what this season does really well is set up so many pieces of what makes this show great. Introduce this season. You got Saul, Gus, Mike, all really getting their introductions inside of this season in laying the groundwork for my favorite seasons of this show. Along the lines, you also get these very important stuff with the Salamanca family inside of it, where you have the introduction with Tuco. That's a great kickoff to the season after the cliffhanger we had before. Just starts off with kind of a bang with him. Extraordinarily amounts of tension inside of that episode. You get Hector Salamanca setting up stuff with him that matters all throughout the next several seasons of the show. Where this one kind of slowed down for me, actually one more positive on it, and even this is where you started to understand how much they were thinking through everything. Right out of the gate, they start teasing the finale of the season. You're like, what is going on with this teddy bear and the water and stuff in the sky? What is happening? And then you don't find out until the final episode of the season. With all of that said, the reason it's in last place for me is really a couple of reasons. Once you get past the Tuco stuff at the beginning, it slows down a lot as you have the aftermath of Walt disappearing for those days. And like the whole fugue state and him lying to everybody, not some of my favorite stuff inside of the show. So it just slows down a little bit before they pick things back up and start trying to grow their own distribution and starting to work with Saul and doing the business side of things right. So it takes a little while for this season to kind of pick up a little bit for me. The other one is just the whole Jane plot line is some of my least favorite stuff with Jessie. It only pays off for me because of Walter White's choices that he makes in regards to her towards the end of it that leads up to the events of the finale. But as for kind of the actual interactions between the two of them, the path they go down with her introducing each other to drugs and stuff like that, I don't like her character at all. I like the actor that plays her dad. He was Q on Star Trek Next Generation, so it was nice for him to show up. I thought he did a great job, but her, especially that last episode where she's in it where they have the money and she's just manipulating Jessie so much. I think it puts Jessie in a bad light. She's not remotely likable in any sort of way, even though Kristen Ritter, I quite enjoy her as an actress. So that kind of brings this one down for me, where those are the things in this show I enjoy rewatching the least. As I said, this is still great television. I'm just having to compare it to the best television. In fourth place is season 1. One of the great things about this show is how fleshed out the characters were right out of the gate. You very early on can understand who Walter White is, this incredibly complex character with so many layers to him, but you're able to understand why he snapped, why he broke very early on inside of the show, as you see him as kind of this teacher that's kind of a loser that has a second job. And then immediately we start to learn, well, he's not some loser. He's a brilliant, brilliant chemist that through the course of life found himself as a teacher in a difficult position. And they have this moment early on in just the middle of that first season where he starts going on and talking about how he just wants to have a choice. He wants to make a choice. And through just this subtle language, the dialogue there, you start to understand who this person is, that he feels all of his potential. He knows how good he is at things, but life didn't give him good choices. And so it just kept leading him down this path to where he's 50 years old, a teacher that has to have a second job. His wife is pregnant and he has cancer. And so he goes, I want to make a choice. I want to do something to be able to make an impact and make a difference. And that so defines who he is that he wants to have control and be the person in charge. And so it finally snaps and he just goes for it. It's so well established early on. Even Jesse Pinkman, where he's this kind of just druggy guy at the beginning of it, and little things inside of it, you can see the potential for why he would be as good at cooking as he is later on inside the show because of the way he interacts with Walter early on in those first episodes where he's saying dumb stuff, but then he's listening, he's paying attention, he's trying to do a good job, and you see that there's so much more to him, that potential that Walter, even as the teacher, kind of called out of him. It's actually there inside of him. We have all kind of the side character, or our main cast that are the side main cast inside of it, where you understand who Hank is really well. Is this very obnoxious personality, but at the same time, very good at his job. His wife, kind of frustrating. And Skylar is the wife that wants to be supportive, but can be a little bit frustrating in the way she interacts with people. You just get all of them right out of the gate. But once again, with this season, like season 2, it kicks off really strong. You have this first episode where the guy decides to go start cooking meth, and then problems ensue. Second episode, they're trying to deal with what do they do with these two people, and then just slows down for about four episodes as they deal with the consequences of going to go and cook meth and everything else kind of going on inside of it. And so the later seasons just have a sense of urgency from beginning to end. You just feel the momentum growing and growing as it goes along. And then there's big payoff at the end. These first 2 seasons kind of meandered a little bit as you got into the middle of it. To end with a couple more positives, you start to discover how even side characters like Tuco have something about them that makes them really interesting and very memorable. And then they show kind of how over the top almost the show can be, where you have Walter going to try to intimidate Tuco and making these little bombs and stuff like that, and they go for it very early on in the show. You get the dark sense of humor, you get the fully developed characters and intricately plotted stuff where each thing that happens actually matters. In third place is season 3. Now this is where classic Breaking Bad really starts to form. First 2 seasons were great. Last 3 seasons, epic television. First few episodes in here, slower, a little bit like the previous seasons, where they're kind of establishing the pieces where Walter doesn't want to cook anymore. Skylar has figured out something's up. He tells her some stuff, so she's going to file for divorce. Jesse's dealing with everything that went down with Jane and his rehabilitation. And then a few episodes in, That, and you have other elements kind of going on with assassins tracking them down, just setting up all these pieces. And then about 4 episodes into it, it just kind of kicks into high gear as Walt starts cooking for Gus again with the kind of this master plan of everything that he has. Gus sends the assassins after Hank. And then this is where we start to see kind of Hank, how good he is at what he does. Well, even before that, he's able to track down Jesse Pinkman, follow him to the trailer, and the only reason that he doesn't catch Jesse is because Walter has inside information, is able to trick him with this information, which then leads to Hank getting very mad at Jesse and beating the crap out of him. All of this having implications that trickle down throughout the rest of the show. But you start to realize Hank, with all the bravado that he has, all these things about him, when it comes down to him just doing his job, he's really good at his job. And so he gets put on leave because, as it turns out, you're not allowed to beat people up. And then the assassins come after him, and you see him just with like no gun or anything like that, able to fight off 2 cartel assassins just because he had a little brief heads up about all of it. Then as you start moving into those latter episodes of this season, the tension starts to build inside of it as Jesse figures out who it was that took out Combo earlier on that led them to trying to get their own distributor, working with Gus, and they realizes that was Gus's people that took out Combo before, in which case Jesse has some problems with these guys. All of it just, this, like I said before, things that happen before always matter later on. Everything has a consequence. And so they have this moment where Jesse feels he has to take these guys out. And so instead of letting Jesse do it, Walt takes them out. And then when they have their meeting with Gus about it, Gus is like, why didn't you trust me to take care of this as we figured this? Why didn't you? Because actually, what I meant to say is then they killed the kid that was the person who did it. And so then that's why they wanted to take the guys out. Gus like, why didn't you trust me? And then they said, well, we didn't know that you're not the one that kind of put out the hit. And you're like, that's the level of complexity and lack of trust inside this that makes it so compelling. And you're like, well, maybe Gus would have taken care of this if they'd given him 24 hours. Or maybe Gus was the one that ordered it. You don't really know, and they don't really know. All of that making for great television. Once again, building the tension as Gus is trying to take care of these guys that are kind of a problem for him. So then they decide that they need to make themselves invaluable to Gus, who they realize has crafted his entire empire around the ability for them to cook Walter White, blue, meth, all of them leading to them killing Glenn, who they, up to this point in time, kind of made him one of the few just kind of nice, likable guys on the show, which made it funny when, funny is not the right word, but that Walter rejects him, even though like he's like the one nice person on the show. I guess he is cooking crystal meth. That's probably not the best thing to do. But so it leads all boiling to this episode where with their master plan, Walt's able to signal off to Jesse that he's got to go kill him. And he goes and kills him, which is not good for Jesse's psychological state, but does create the scenario where they can live for another day. But that'll lead us to our next season. This was just some amazing storytelling inside of this season as it kind of went along. Real quick before I tell you who comes out on top, be sure to give me your ranking down below in the comments section. Hey, this is a fantastic show. We're all watching this video because we love it, so let's be respectful even if some people have some differing opinions on things. Our runner-up is season 5. This was incredibly difficult for me to decide which season to put on top and which one was the runner-up. I know a lot of you think this is the top one. It's fantastic in and of itself. So I'm only going to gush over it is really what I'm going to do. Kicking things off at the beginning of the season, you're dealing with the aftermath of them blowing Gus up. And you start to see at this point in time, this is where I start to think Heisenberg has fully taken over. When Walter White at the end of season 4 was like, I won, I think that's when the switch went off inside of his head and he started to believe he can do whatever he wants and he can get away with it. He is Heisenberg and he is the best. So you go into this season, they're having to deal with the aftermath of all of that and figure out how they're going to build their own sort of empire inside of this. And that's really what he wants to do. He wants to build an empire. Everyone else has kind of their own little motivations for wanting to make some money inside of this. But Walter now thinks of himself truly as Heisenberg, which leads to some fantastic little sequences where they meet up with the distributor guy. He's like, say my name. Well, I don't know who you are. You know who I'm the cook. Like, well, say my name. Heisenberg. Like, just amazing things as he truly has become this legendary person inside of the drug underworld. But he also, to make all this happen, starts to work with some actually shady people that have no moral code about them, which sets up all the pieces for failure later on. As they kind of go into this one, you keep having these moments where you can see, like, if they exited now, would they have been okay? If they'd done this, would they have been okay? Could they have done these different things and been okay at this point in time? And I'm not trying, because of the way the stuff with Mike broke down, I'm not quite sure if they would have. But you can see, once again, as Walter White just keeps going darker and darker, but a lot of the other characters don't. Jessie still fully has the same conscience that he had before. He never kind of had this darkness that took over him. So as they do the great train robbery inside of it, and they're actually successful at this crazy thing they tried to do, the thing that kind of eventually leads to everything imploding is that Meth Damon, I blanked on his name as I'm talking about a whole bunch of things really fast. Meth Damon, Todd shoots a kid, which Jessie's just never going to be okay with because Jessie still has a moral compass. Walter White, being gone, being taken over by Heisenberg, is still okay working with these people. And you have this little section in it where his empire just keeps growing and growing and growing. And they have like a whole 3-month montage in an episode, culminating in this episode where Skylar's like, there's more money here. I never could figure out how to count it. I tried all these different things. You've made so much money. When are you going to be done? And kind of closing out the first half of the season where everything starts to implode as you go into the later parts. This one for me is just, the whole second half is like a long series of punches straight to the gut as you watch everything they built. And then all the little holes that were established and little things that happened before, it all starts to crumble. The big one being when Walter actually kills Mike. And you're like, oh, Walter, how could you do this? And then Jessie, as he starts to figure out everything that Walt's done, starts believing he's the devil. He gets so crazy that he's going to start working whoever he can to kind of take him out. You have the great moment where Hank, sitting on a toilet, figures out who Heisenberg really is, starts like researching everything. Walter goes over to his place and tries to play it cool, and then Hank just punches him in the face, leading to kind of all this stuff kind of playing out in kind of last few episodes. But just so, when you just think about shows that did it right in truly building to the appropriate climax to the show, that they didn't overstay their welcome, they didn't cut it short, they knew where they were headed, and it really pays off. And as you go into the final episodes of this one, where all these pieces of Meth Damon and his guys kind of working with Walter, and Walter's trying to not get caught by Hank but doesn't want to kill Hank, he's trying to protect Jessie but at the same time doesn't want Jessie to take him out, and Skylar's like, you got to do what you got to do, telling Walter to kill Jessie, culminating in Walter being tricked by Jessie to drive out into the wilderness where the money's at. Hank shows up with Jessie, so Walter calls in the backup. It's just, as you start to see all the kind of pieces of it start to play out exactly in a specific way, and you realize, oh no, this is going to go so badly. And then Meth Damon and his neo-Nazi crews kill Hank after Walter begs them not to kill him, tells them the money's there, says everything that he probably shouldn't say in that moment. And Hank gets these great final lines where he's like, this guy's about to kill him, has all the guns, just F you, man. And then turns to Walter and he's like, you're the smartest guy I ever knew, and you can't figure it out that this guy made up his mind 10 years ago. Get it over with. The guy just shoots him, and then you're like, oh, this is brutal. And what happens? They take almost all of Walter's money. Walter gives up Jessie, thinking this would be some saving piece inside of it, and then is like, just says like the cruelest things that he can to Jessie, thinking that Jessie's about to die, and he's like, Jessie kind of betrayed us, so he thinks that it's just gonna be he's dying, not knowing that these guys are actually going to do horrible things to him. And then Walter decides to like goes home. As all this is taking place, Hank had called Marie, and Marie had forced Skyler to make sure that Junior was told what was going on. So Walter shows up at home wanting to like disappear with his family. Walter Jr. just goes off like, how could you do this? You killed Uncle. Just heartbreaking. And then you see him as his cancers return, off in a cabin for months, sitting there waiting to die with millions of dollars around him. It's like, this is what he's built it all for, leading to the final episode where he finds the right ways to be able to get money to his family. He uses the Ryzen to take out the bad lady, and then sets up the scenario where he's going to kill everybody. And the one he kind of wants to kill the most is Jessie, because he thinks he's working with them. And then as soon as he realizes they took him captive and they're forcing him to do this, Jesse's not a bad guy anymore. And then he knows he's going to die anyway inside of what he's about to do, but like uses his body to shield Jessie inside of it. Just powerful stuff what they're able to do. And there's just little moments, the little nods that he has. And I just love this finale. Maybe it helped that a week before this, I saw the Dexter finale, which was terrible. And then I saw this one, I was like, this is so satisfying. This is so everything that I want. The reason this one is in second place for me isn't that there's anything wrong with it. I just thought that both seasons 4 and 5 were both basically perfect seasons. And so it kind of comes down to which was the one that I enjoyed the ride a little bit more, that had a little bit more satisfying elements to it. And the battle between Gus and Walt was more compelling to me, or it hits a few more right notes for me than the tragedy of it all coming down. Both basically perfect seasons. It's just choosing between two perfect things, so I could have gone either way. But coming in first place is season 4. For me, this is the best season of one of the best shows of all time. And as I mentioned before at the end of the last one, it all kind of boils down to that battle between Walt and Gus, and just the way the season maintains and continues to build the tension between these two characters and have it truly pay off in the end. As we mentioned earlier on, at the end of season 3, they take out Glenn, setting up the scenario where Gus needs Walt and Jessie, but he doesn't trust them. They kind of screwed him over. And so then you have this dark alliance between all these people it's so volatile. But at the same time, inside of it, you see how all of these people learn to very much respect one another. As much as they don't trust one another, as much as they have issues with one another, they respect one another. That makes their dynamics to each of them interesting. And while everyone here is a bad guy, everyone's doing really bad stuff, they do it in a way that makes them characters that you're still kind of rooting for them for some reason and in some way. Like at the beginning, Gus didn't really like Jessie, but then he starts working with Mike, and then they start to see the value of him in the way that he does things, and so Gus starts using him. All of this leading to the sequel. We'll get to the little where they go to Mexico later on. But as you go through the season, we start to dig in deeper into Gus and what's kind of going on with him. And you start to see his backstory and like what made him who he is. And we've been watching him all throughout the previous season have these interactions with the Salamancas, the cartels, and you think that it's a partnership, and then you realize Gus hates them. He's doing all of this because he's trying to take them out, and he's been manipulating each of these scenarios as much because he wants to win and succeed and make money, and is also because he just wants to destroy them. And so we're like rooting for him to destroy the cartels because of how evil they are, because of all the stuff that they have done that makes us hate them. And so once again, Jessie ends up going with them too, because the cartels have forced Gus into a corner where he's going to have to cook for them. So he takes Jessie down there to teach their cooks, which has this great little sequence where they start talking down to Jessie and like, you don't even know this basic Neville stuff. And just the moment where he like turns it back on them, and he's like, well, if I didn't know what I was doing, I wouldn't be here. These guys, the guys at Bay seem to think my stuff is better than yours, so I might not know how to synthesize this stuff, but I know how to make better meth than you. And this place is a dump. Clean it up. It's like, yes, that was awesome. And then it leads to this sequence outside where Gus is gonna do something. They're not gonna leave Jessie there. You're like, what is going on here? And Mike says this line to Jessie. They're like, Jessie, you're gonna stay here and cook. Mike walks up to him like, either we all go home or none of us go home. You're like, what is about to go down? And you have that sequence where then Gus opens up. He's got the drinks for everybody. Takes a drink himself. Everybody takes a drink except Jessie and Mike. And then you're like, wait, what's going to happen? Gus, dignified, goes to the bathroom and starts vomiting in the floor and then walks out as trying to escape. All of us are like, oh, Gus is awesome. Man, I don't want him to succeed. I think I want Walter to succeed, but Gus is amazing. And that's the complexity of this show, that you're rooting for everyone inside of it. All these pieces building as Gus now realizes Gus realizes that Jesse's going to cook his Walt, so he doesn't need Walt, and he's not. And Walter discovers all of this, and so he's trying to find a way to be able to get Jessie back onto his side, and all these dynamics inside of it, leading to Walter concocting like his ultimate mastermind scheme that in my mind is the thing that finally snapped him, where you have this scenario where you have the bad guy, all these different factions, Gus, Salamancas, and Walter all kind of coming into a point where Walter manages to take out all of the rivals from the first 4 seasons in a single motion, and he wins and steps out on top. And just all of this stuff. Incredible storytelling. Even inside of you have Skylar slowly step into being evil, Breaking Bad herself, to work with her husband that she kind of hates, but sees the positives inside of it, this car wash and everything. Excellent, excellent television. I love the rising story. And especially because of that Gus plot line that just makes it a little bit more satisfying for me. So season 4 comes in at number 1. Remember to share your ranking down below. If you want more content like this, there's an amazing video right over there. I recommend you check it out if you enjoyed this video. I don't even know what it is. I don't know what I just selected the one that says YouTube recommends. So I don't know what they're recommending to you. Wherever it sends you, let me know in the comment section where it is. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much.